The day was unseasonably bright and warm when Cherry Dallon's parents called to report her missing. At 7 years old, she should not have been able to wander far, but we searched every square foot of the Dallon property, all 6 acres, and could find no sign of her. She had simply gone. "Third one in as many weeks," grunted the chief. I glanced away from the computer screen. I had been chosen for the thankless task of entering all the details of the report into the system. The computer was old. It had been old when the station acquired it through a generous donation by the Blue Ladies, our town's resident old biddies club, and the years since had not been kind. I tapped a key and watched as the little hourglass popped up on screen. I leaned back in my chair and propped my feet up on the desk with a squeak and a thump. My arms crossed behind my head as if by their own accord. The job had grown stale long before the Moppet Murders began the year before. A chilling series of brutal killings had forced us all to attention. In the quiet months that followed, we had gradually slumped back into our positions like an art display that had been temporarily misplaced. "What do you think it means, Chief?" The old man, perched on the edge of the front desk, tapped his boot with one yellowed fingernail as he stared out the window. The town in front of us was still. Behind us, a thick and treacherous woods stood as a testament to the general dislike of strangers our community held like a vigil. He coughed, then wiped his fist on the bottom of his slacks. "It means he's back. Sick son of a bitch. He's decided he needs more of ours." The hourglass disappeared, and I went back to typing in the identifying information we wouldn't need until the body was found. Officially, we were looking for the girl. All but the chief and I were out combing fields, ponds, and woods. Every once in a while you could hear someone call out. The girl's name caught on the wind like an old tragic country song. Little Sherry. Her parents would never see her alive again. "Why do you think you chose Elma?" I asked, and struck the enter key again. The hourglass danced a little jig on the screen. "I mean, what's the appeal?" The chief stood and stretched his full 6.5 feet with a groan. When he had finished, he slumped back down to half that size. There was a joke in certain circles that Chief Hatchet hunched so low because he had the weight of the town's sins on his shoulders. I wondered if it wasn't true as he slouched further with each passing year. "Elma hasn't always been the quiet little whistle-stop it is now. You wouldn't know," he said with a glance over his shoulder at me. "Outsiders don't know much about the horrible things that happened here because, more than anything, our people hold their secrets close to their breast." He had my attention. The hourglass disappeared, and I made only the barest effort to keep going with my task. After all, the search was already on, desperately hopeless or not, and no amount of description was going to change what would inevitably find: a flayed corpse turned nearly inside out. I say nearly because the child was never totally turned. He left the cherubic face intact, and curiously devoid of the carnage that befell the tiny body. I tapped in the girl's home address. It was just a half a mile from town, and supposedly on the safer end, at that. My finger hovered over the enter key. "What secrets?" I prompted, and struck the key as Chief slumped against the countertop. He stared out the window, his face pulled down low like he had only a tenuous grip on the contents of his stomach. His eyes were hard, and his voice, when he finally spoke, reminded me of a gravel under the slow-moving tires of a cruiser. No one drove quickly on the way to tell the parents of a Moppet that he or she was found tortuously mangled in an area that had been well searched only days or hours before. Hardened by service or not, none of us would look them in the eyes as we explained that we had no idea how we had missed the poor tyke. "When I was a boy, about Cherry's age, the first of them went missing," the chief said. He still looked out the window, but a faraway look in his eyes told me that he was seeing something much worse than an empty street. He turned up in Cryer's Ravine. Chief found him only after a woman reported funk in the water. You know, in those days, we still washed outside. He let a wry grin curve his lips. "Nothing you would know about, I'm sure." I let the comment slide off my back and didn't turn away. I watched as he readjusted his position against the countertop. keyed in a few more details about the parents of the newest missing girl, and hit enter again. The keys clacked hollow in the nearly empty room. The absence of a ringing phone or normal day's chatter had started to raise the hairs on the back of my neck. Chief followed the funk, something like pink wax stuck to your clothes like spoiled lard, and found the boy. He'd been mangled up, just like now, only his head was torn clean off his body. It sat on a stump on his neck, staring at his own body from a pile of rocks on the shore. He pushed off the countertop and walked towards me. On his way past my desk, he thumped his fingers on the nearly forgotten file I was supposed to be transcribing. Get back to work. The chief walked toward the back of the station and disappeared into the walled-off break room. I tried to shake the feeling that there was something here, something I was missing, as I trained my eyes back on the tidy scrawl in front of me. I typed in the description of the outfit the girl, Sherry, was last seen wearing, and it hit me. "Chief?" I called. "What?" he answered through a guttural clog in his throat. For a moment, I didn't want to respond. I wondered if I didn't say another word, could we both forget that I had broken the new silence before it had a chance to solidify. I looked down at the picture of Sherry Dolan, then swiveled in my chair to face the break room. Chief stood at the door, a cup of fresh coffee in his hand and a red tinge around his eyes that hadn't been there before. "What is it, rookie?" My lips and throat were suddenly dry. I kept my eyes on him and he walked toward me. He stopped beside my desk and I cringed. My eyes dropped out of respect or fear. I didn't know which. "Do you have something to say to me?" the chief asked. I sucked in a breath and held it. "Have you always lived at Cryer's Ravine?" I asked him through a quick whoosh of fetid air. He nodded his head once, then walked back to the front door of the station. "They'll be back home within an hour," he said, his eyes on the empty street through the window. "I want the file updated by then. It's time we stop screwing around and catch this monstrosity before it hibernates again."